the studio, the Commissioner of the Met, Sir Mark Rowley, with good news, an additional, I understand, £8.5 million of funding. Sir Mark, as I say, in the studio now to explain more. OK, thank you for coming along, Commissioner. Where's the money going to be spent, sir? Good morning to you.
Morning, Nick. So we've made a lot of progress in bearing down on violence, and this is about doing more of that. And the Mayor's put some more money into it, partly for the preventative work that gets run from City Hall, diversionary schemes for offenders, but partly for the enforcement work we're doing with some of our operations. And just to give you some examples of that, the sort of taking on the drugs lines in London has had a big effect over the last year. We find that the men of violence running drugs lines that are sort of disputing drugs across London into the home counties, over 80% of them have got violence convictions. 1 in 10 of them that we arrest for drugs lines have got previous arrests for murder. That's the degree of violence in there. And just to illustrate it, in the last week, we've arrested 14 people and charged them, closed down 13 lines. And it's funding of more of those sorts of initiatives, which is really, really important. I mean, last year we've reduced murder to its lowest rate since 2014. It's down at sort of around 110 by about 17%. We halved teenage homicides last year. I mean, that's fantastic news. I mean, it's still every murder is still a tragedy, but the numbers are going in the right direction. Some of the things that we'll be using the money for to do more work on, so robbery. Robbery's the one area of violence that I'm particularly concerned about that's sort of bouncing back too rapidly from its sort of COVID lows, and we're working to suppress that at the moment. So last week the team did 130 arrests. So there's a lot of work going on there, but we need to do more. We're doing some counter pickpocket operations around Westminster, Leicester Square and Central. So all of that work, and it takes money, it takes resource, and it's good that the Mayor's put a bit more into it.
What might lie behind the uptick in robberies, Commissioner?
Frankly, I think it's fundamentally the street population. So COVID, not much street population, not much opportunity to steal phones and phones and watches, and we're seeing more of that going on. So our operations need to be sophisticated. It's not just about targeting on the streets and we're doing undercover operations to catch offenders, but also identifying where are all the stolen phones going, who's like sort of recycling those and going after those, because that cuts off the criminal business.
Your other task, and you've spoken candidly about this, is to improve the standards within the Met. And obviously we see, as you refer to, these troubling headlines as the bad cops are rooted out. How long is it going to take? Are you going to achieve it in your tenure?
You'll never have an organisation of over 40,000 people that's perfect. I think the test that you ought to give me is, am I going to be able to persuade the public of London that we are appropriately ruthless in guarding our standards? Because that's the test that we failed on, isn't it? So I think over the next couple of years, you will see all the evidence you need to that we are appropriately ruthless. But the cases we're building today, so our appeals are generating more reports. If we're arresting an officer today for something horrific, that won't come to court maybe for 2 years' time. So there's going to be a long tail, but convincing London that we're serious about this will be much quicker than that. And I think my point is, I don't want this to dominate the headlines the whole time. I've got hundreds of problematic officers I need to sort out. I've got tens of thousands of people doing these operations to deal with violence, whether it's the sort of things I spoke about or dealing with violence against women and girls in the nighttime economy.
But you've spoken passionately about regaining the trust. You'll need like an intelligence infrastructure within the force to find these people, won't you? Because, all right, the ones you've already identified, they're on the books. What's your intelligence that's finding those that still need to be rooted out that we don't yet know about?
So that's why previously announced an anti-corruption and abuse command, and we've strengthened our intelligence capability in there and our sort of covert tactics, and we're getting more reports from the appeals we've done. So all of that is happening. I promised when I spoke after the conviction of David Carrick, I sort of listed then the initiatives that we're doing, and I said I'm going to give a big formal update at the end of March, and I still intend to do that. And that will be the first milestone in terms of saying to London, look, we are serious and we're making progress.
So hundreds already caught or being processed or being looked at, hundreds more as yet undetected?
I'm not going to come... You want me to make up numbers? I'm not going to make up numbers.
I don't want to make up... No, I don't want you to make up...
So my point is...
Are you halfway there?
My point is there are tens of thousands of great officers, there are hundreds of people I need to sort out, and that's what I'm working on.
All right. Can I take you elsewhere? And I'll take you to Lancashire. And you know the next question. I'd be amazed if you didn't. What was your reaction to police officers and senior officers in Lancashire making public some of the background details of Nicola Bulley, such as her problems with HRT and alcohol?
I I don't like to sit in judgment on a case that I don't know all the details on, and that's. I know that's going to annoy you when I say that,
no,
Nick.
It doesn't annoy me.
But sort of, I've sat in the chair making difficult decisions on tricky murder investigations, counter-terrorism investigations, and sometimes what you need to say publicly might look odd. Now, clearly, what will be in their minds most of all is you've got a very worrying situation, you've got a very upset family, and there's a woman who's been missing for a worrying amount of time, and they're desperately trying to find her. That they've decided to put some information out to help that process. Whether that was the right thing to do or not, time will tell. But I think we should all be focused on, rather than this becoming a bit of a should they, shouldn't they circus, we should all be focused on helping them find her.
I will try again. The Home Secretary is, quotes, concerned. The Shadow Home Secretary described it as very unusual. And Zoe Billingham, somebody you'll know well, former Inspector, the Police Watchdog, said it will further rock public confidence. It will, won't it? And if you look at recent investigations, Stephen Port, Midland, things like that, the public are understandably sceptical about the capability of police to investigate. You're the most senior officer in the land. We need a comment.
So, I wouldn't mind commenting on it if I had all the facts to hand. I've got more than
respectfully. So, what you need to know, we've released details of this woman and her problems with alcohol and HRT. I'm not asking you about what's happened to her. That would be totally and utterly inappropriate. But would you sanction such methods within the Met? If somebody said to you, Gov, we think we better release these details. This woman's having problems with HRT and alcohol.
Any time you're releasing personal information, you need to be very, very cautious. Is it absolutely necessary for a policing purpose to help achieve the aim? In this case, help achieve the aim of finding a missing woman. Now, they've made that call. Time will tell. They've referred themselves to the IPC. Time will tell whether that was the right call in that circumstance. So, but I don't know what information they have in front of them investigating the case. So we're all judging that from outside. I can understand why, particularly with those other cases you mentioned, particularly the other headlines around policing and
also
the trust of policing and the trust of women. I understand why it plays into that, but let's focus on finding her, and then let's see whether the IPC find that Lancashire got it right or got it wrong.
But I will, for one final reason, come back on this, which is, one of the biggest tasks that you and your colleagues have is to restore confidence from women in what you and your blokes and women do. So I will say again, on behalf of women listening in this town, was something like this to happen to a woman or their sister or their friend or whatever, would details about their problems with the menopause be made public by the Met? I will try again. You would find it rather odd, would you not?
It would be a rare thing to. It would be a rare thing to do.
If I came to you and said I want to do it, Gov, I would have to make the most compelling case, wouldn't I?
It would be a rare thing to do, but there may be a case where it is necessary to do, and that's why I don't want to be absolute. But it would be a rare thing to do. We need to release the information that helps find somebody, and Lancashire have made that call, and time will tell whether they got it right or wrong.
Does the Met stand by ready to help if requested?
Of course.
Would you consider that? How does it work, Sir Mark?
So, the way we do murder investigations and high-risk missing person investigations, there is a model which has a review stages after 7 days, 28 days, etc. And sometimes those reviews are done by an independent SIO within the force. Sometimes it makes sense to bring somebody from outside force. So I'm sure Lancashire are thinking about the right time to have those sorts of reviews, and if they decide to ask another force, then of course I'm sure any other force will be happy to help.
Coming back a little bit to what we were talking about your job to improve the image of the Met, with all the stories that are coming out about officers who've let down the tens of thousands of good bloke and women who serve under you, and exactly. I stress that point again, who've let them down, and by the way, I don't think anybody loathes them more than the cops in the force, I stress that as well. But what does it do for morale and indeed recruiting when people see what has gone on in the Met? Can I put it to you, it almost looks like a circus at times.
So I speak to a lot of frontline men and women, and they're really fed up and upset by these headlines. But I mean, I say that cautiously because the public are more important than us, and we can't make ourselves the victim in this. But they come to work because they join policing, not because they're going to make loads of money out of it, because it matters and it's an interesting job and they want to make a difference for communities. And they're in an organisation now which is being challenged in headlines on a regular basis, perfectly properly, because of the actions of a minority, and because as an organisation, as I've said previously, through systemic failings, we haven't been tough enough on this. And so the ones I speak to, they get the fact that we need to face into this storm and go through it, but it's not a pleasant place to be when they're out day in, day out trying to do a good job for victims of crime in London.
In your long career, have you ever reported a colleague for being a rogue? Had a word with a senior officer?
I've dealt with things as senior officer. I can remember incidents as as an inspector that I've dealt with. So absolutely, and I've always been tough on standards panels myself. And I think this is the challenge I face. On the one hand, people need to be persuaded that me and my team as leaders are serious about this, and you will see the results of that, as I say, building over forthcoming months. But in parallel to that, the way Londoners' trust will return is about the quality of community policing. It's about how we respond to crimes. It's about bearing down on violence. It's about the violence against women and girls getting much better at taking on the predators who target women and girls. So we've got to do all of that to build trust whilst getting rid of these negatives that are undermining it.
Talking about building trust and confidence in the Met, are you aware of the percentage of detection of burglaries at the moment is desperately low? Do you know the figure?
I don't have every detection figure on my head.
It's a little over 4%.
Yeah, it's not where it needs to be.
And I understand it should be more in the region of 30 to 40%. What can be done about that? That is pitifully low as regards burglary. This is burglary detection, by the way, not report detection or other cases to be taken into consideration.
So I think the burglary detections on people's homes is much higher than that. I think that figure is the wider that counts everything from a shed being broken into through to a sort of a high-value burglary. Yeah. So burglary detections on
that's
people's
often when people come face-to-face with the Met, isn't it? So and they need the Met to really help them. Right?
So the figure you've got there, I don't think reflects burglaries of people's homes. One of the things I announced, first of all, was about we're now attending every burglary of someone's home, which we weren't doing a while ago. So that figure's now up sort of close to 100%, and that's both more reassuring for victims, but also, of course, turning up at a scene gives you more chance to find opportunities to solve the crime. So all of that's about improving the day-to-day service to Londoners. I've spoken about rebuilding neighbourhood policing. We're putting more PCSOs out on the streets. That is part of preventing crime. We're strengthening our approach to a range of crimes. Our detection rates are going up in many respects, like for rape, etc.
Not burglary, I say again, Sir Mark.
So there's lots to do, but there's great work going on in London. Just to sort of loop back round to the violence against women and girls agenda. I mean, we've got a Project Vigilant, which is about dealing with predatory men on the streets of London around nighttime economy. The areas we've deployed that in London, in Lambeth and other centres, has reduced nighttime economy-related predatory behaviour by over a quarter. I mean, so there's lots of fantastic work going on. There's always more to do, Nick, as you say.
I wonder if this comes down to, can I use the word manpower or personnel? Last month it was announced every London borough will get a senior officer to lead local policing as part of your priorities regards neighbourhood you've just mentioned.
Yes.
But I wonder, shouldn't there possibly be a chief superintendent for each of the 32 London boroughs? In some of those, I understand, one chief could have responsibility for 3 boroughs. Well, I don't need to tell you, there's broadly 250,000 people per London borough. That's about 750,000 under one chief superintendent. When I remind you, the population of Bedfordshire, who has its own force, Northamptonshire, 714,000. There's not enough senior officers going around, are there? We need more chief supers or above.
We're strengthening the local leadership with the superintendent model, as you've rightly pointed out.
But I'm talking about the overall command, the old borough command. You remember the days of borough command?
Yeah, I do. So having the 12 larger units gives chief superintendents more flexibility on resource to have an impact on crime. When we had the 32, some of them were so small, it was very hard for them to form a team to take on a burglary initiative or a robbery initiative. The size gives them more flexibility.
But it's like policing the whole of Bedfordshire. You've got a chief constable there and an ACC. And
it's not like policing the whole of Bedfordshire. They have murder teams, they have personnel. It's different to that. I think, Nick, if you'll forgive me, I would say I'm
closer to it.
I'm a bit more expert than you in how to organise a police force, I would suggest.
Indeed.
You are rightly, though, on behalf of your listeners, asked me a question about what it looks like for them on the street. So if you can leave me to organise what's behind the scenes...
You're confident one chief super can do 3 boroughs?
With the extra superintendents, they absolutely can do. But the questions you focus on, quite rightly, are what it looks like on the streets of London. I know we have a big job to rebuild trust. That's why we're doing this extra work on violence. That's why we say we've had these fantastic results on reducing knife crime, teenage violence, and that's why we're putting more resource into that. And that's why we're going to rebuild neighbourhood policing, because communities want to see cops and PCSOs where they live that know the issues and tackle them.
Last couple of points. The Met's appeal for people to come forward with regards to war crimes during the illegal invasion by Russia of Ukraine, which sadly, as you're probably aware, Commissioner, approaches its first anniversary next week, actually. Specifically, what do you imagine your colleagues are looking for there? What are they wanting to hear, or what would they want to pick up on?
So, when we talk about the counter-terrorism responsibilities the Met has and sort of coordinates the national policing approach, and Matt Dukes, who leads on that for us, was doing a briefing yesterday.
Some pretty scary stuff.
Some pretty scary stuff. So, I mean, the threat that they used to talk about, the work was almost entirely dealing with terrorism. Now it's much more mixed, and it includes quite a lot of war crimes work, as you say, and a lot of hostile state work. And he was speaking yesterday about significant threats from the Iranian state on the streets of the UK. In terms of the war crimes piece, there is war crimes legislation which every country has a duty to investigate. So the sort of things we're looking at are use of sort of sexual violence, for example, in war zones is one very tragically common issue. And we're trying to collect...
This is where potentially Russian soldiers might have used sexual violence to subjugate the local population.
Exactly, yes. So that sort of thing, that we may have refugees or people who know people who can make allegations, and there's a coordinated sort of operation on a sort of international basis that we'll be feeding our information into. So that's what that's about. And it's important that if it is possible after this conflict finishes to hold anybody to account, that would be excellent, wouldn't it?
It would. Final question. You have referenced neighbourhood policing on a number of occasions.
Yes.
You're probably aware that the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was yesterday talking about bolstering neighbourhood policing and looking at recruiting 13,000 officers and PCSOs. I'm not going to take you into a political arena, Commissioner, don't worry there. But the Home Secretary did reference, of course, the famous Sarah Lancashire, who plays Sarah Lancashire as Kaywood. What's her, in the Catherine Kaywood? I'm so sorry, Catherine
Yes.
Kaywood, in that marvellous show that I'm sure many people have watched. Your reaction like that? Do we need more Catherine Kaywoods out on the streets?
She's great, isn't she? My wife and I were unashamedly hooked up.
It's the biggest smile I've seen from you.
That's it, yeah. My wife
The
and
happiness of Happy Valley.
My wife and I were, and Hebden Bridge is a lovely place to visit as well. I've visited it as well in the past, but my wife and I were sort of unashamedly hooked on it as a programme, and whilst there's a bit of fiction in there, as a sort of cop character, she was she's a very attractive character and larger than life, and I wouldn't.
And
mind.
is she the model? What should we take from Catherine Kaywood?
I wouldn't.
Your blokes and women listening now.
I wouldn't want. I've got about 34,000 officers. I wouldn't want 34,000 Catherine Kaywoods, but a few would be good value. I mean, we need.
What did you like? Why don't you go home and watch comedy or documentaries about sharks or something like that?
Maybe I'm just. Nick, I spent 4 years out policing. I came back into policing because I still love it. I still love what we do, regardless of the issues we've got to face down. We've got lots of fantastic people, and I've got lots of characters who are just as interesting as Catherine Kaywood. Not the same as her, perhaps, but lots of characters like that.
But neighbourhood policing is the way forward.
It's the bedrock of policing. I think as we've been stretched over the last couple of decades, some of the resources and financial pressures have been sucked out of local policing. That's our foundation. There are other areas we need to put more resource into in due course. Work against sort of public protection, violence against women and girls. That is the reporting's going up all the time, and that's a stretch. The online fraud world, I'm sure you've spoken about on your show sometimes.
Yeah.
But what we can't do is stretch all the resources across that range and leave neighbourhoods bare, because where we all live, we all want to have a sense that there are local police who understand what's going on in our area and are working to make us all feel safe, and that's really important.